is interactive and at the same time give you enough information. I associate myself as being a developer more than a governance person because that's how I started my career. I don't know if anyone remembers this, or even if you do know this programming language called ADA. If you do, maybe you can catch up over lunch and talk about this programming language called ADA. Why is this relevant? It's relevant because systems have been built throughout time. So for example, maybe some of you will remember this. There's a streaming architecture called Kafka. About 10 years ago, Kafka became popular. What did people do with it? So what we did with it was, maybe a simple example. I am running a credit card system. My boss asked me, please provide me with real-time data, visibility of the credit card transactions that are in my business. Sounds simple enough. Yeah, built it, it's fantastic. And then another few years pass, somebody tells you, great, we have visibility. Can you now include AI into it to do fraud detection? So somebody creates an AI model, it does fraud detection, it does it pretty well. There's this thing about accuracy. You say I get 70%, it's pretty good. So the boss is happy for a few years, and then regulation steps in. Regulators here will ask you, how did you build this model? What were the inputs into the AI model? And nowadays, it is critical. For example, here's another example. If you, as a bank, does an automated loan approval system, you reject people of their loans, you approve of their loans. Explainability or trusted AI is critical. You have to be able to tell a regulator what were the features or what are the data points that you are using to build your AI. So all of these things are the fundamentals of governance in 2025 today. Here's another thing. Just one example probably for discussion's sake, right? Citibank was fined 136 million US dollars for data governance breaches. What does it actually mean? It actually meant that Citi, large organization, grew via some mergers and acquisitions. When you do a merger and acquisition, you still have to report to the financial authority what is your risk. So what happens here is they were not able to modernize fast enough, so they were hit with this huge fine. And just to iterate, right? You need to have an ability to report your financial risk to regulators. At the same time, you need to have the ability to be able to innovate fast so that your AI can be used. Data chaos cannot support AI scale, which is my next slide perhaps, which is quite easy to understand, at the same time quite hard to understand. We have more data today than we ever had, and we have more AI tooling to help us make sense of the data. I think this was something fairly acceptable, everyone understands this. Here's another example. Most people are familiar with web applications for sure. You have a web application, the web application has web click analytics. Well, web click analytics, analytics that tells you how much time are people spending on your website, what are the products that they are looking at. And then here's another thing, you have mobile applications. Sounds simple, here now you have mobile applications. And then you have social media. Maybe in Korea you have a different set of social media. In Singapore, we primarily using Facebook and TikTok, right? So all of these represent data streams, right? That have data that can be used for analytics. Why is this important? Simple question that could have been asked is, can you tell me where I should be investing my product for the next quarter based on clickstream analytics, mobile analytics, social media analytics? It sounds simple, but in actual fact, it can be pretty hard because you still need to, especially in the age of AI and also governance, you need to have the ability to be able to explain to the government or regulators, how was your AI developed? So it is a very strange situation. You have a lot of data and you have less insight today. So what do you want to do, or what you need to do about this? And then this is where Cloudera comes in, right? The key pain and challenges that you face as a data governance team is you have data. Data is chaotic. There's a lot of data, which is great. Now you have a lot of data. Everybody wants to make use of AI. But do you trust your data? Is the data in a place that you can actually use without violating any governance, which is the last part, of course. It's compliance, right? GDPR, DORA, BCBS 239. Regulators are enforcing very strongly organizations to provide information in a traditional sense. How is the data being used? And more importantly now with AI, how is AI being used with the data that is available? Right? So that is one of the key pain and challenges that we are facing. Let me just go through. Alright, so automated data lineage, auditability, resilience, operational risk. Gone are the days when you had spreadsheets. Maybe you still have spreadsheets. Spreadsheets that maintain, this was the table, that's the column in the table. It is used by a business intelligence system further down in the system. What you require today is an automated metadata management and data lineage system. What does it mean? You should be able to go into your existing infrastructure, the data infrastructure, and the system should magically capture all of your downstreams, which is all your databases, all your CRMs, and all of the transformations that you are making, and all the business intelligence reports that are being generated automatically without the need of human intervention. And this is what Cloudera actually offers. We'll see some demonstration in a while, but basically what we're going to be able to do is, you have an existing infrastructure which has been built up over multiple years. It will be rare for any organization to have the tribal knowledge unless somebody has stayed and worked in multiple organizations within an organization to tell you that I am using Salesforce, I am using a Sybase database, I am using a credit card system with mainframe that is going through a transformation using, let me try to think of one, Talent as one option. I'm using Oracle Data Integrator, and I'm using DataStage. It is rare to have that tribal knowledge in a single individual or individuals. So what Cloudera will be providing you is an ability to see every single system, every single transformation, every single business intelligence report that is generated in an automated way. Just to add on, Chris was speaking about this, and you will see some demonstrations in the afternoon. He mentioned Agent Studio. So Agent Studio gives you the ability to connect to your data systems, and then gives the business the ability to interact with your data systems. So basically you can run reports, generate your own reports, and get business insights out of this. Great idea. Why is this a challenge? This becomes a challenge if you have, by mistake, allowed some access to PII data. PII, of course, privacy information, great thing that regulators go after. So the last part that we talked about here is the automated reporting and audit support. Even with AI systems in place, you will be able to see how your AI systems are assessing your data, and you can generate reports as well as data quality checks to make sure that you have not exposed your organization to any risk. Let me go on. So what does Cloudera do for you? Cloudera, again, mentioning the same thing, perhaps over and over again, is that we will go in, extract the metadata. We are not extracting your data. We're going to go into your system, extract your metadata, map your entire data estate. So for example, I know the slide is a bit small, On the very right hand side is where most people, the business interacts with business intelligence tools. Or nowadays, they're smarter, they use conversational AI tooling chatbots that interact with your data. Your data probably comes in some form of real-time system. On the very left-hand side, your real-time systems which are capturing the data in certain places. You're carrying out perhaps at an older stage, not using a ETL tool, you're not using a graphical tool, perhaps the code was written 15 years ago. You actually coded it into the system. Right? It does a transformation, you could push it out into a cloud, you could have done it into another ETL tool, Informatica being another one, and then you're pushing it out to the business intelligence system. This has grown throughout time, right? It allows you to visualize your data flow, understand where the data came from, and most importantly, I'll talk about this a bit more, is your data landscape is ever evolving. New projects come in, you may choose to use different platform tools to do it, or you do mergers and acquisitions. You are actually getting somebody else's IT system within your own system. If you try to do this manually, it's actually fairly hard. So what you want to do is to have an automated system to do all of this together. Wim spoke about this. We have a lot of customers that are going through this system. It is 100% automated. There is no need to coding. You basically don't need to code. You can code if you want to, but it is going to give you time to value from, instead of weeks or months, you're going to get time to value of your entire data estate within hours. The hybrid, of course, any data system will be on-prem, it will be on public cloud, you may move it back to on-prem. That is where the opportunity lies. Zero professional services hours. What does it actually mean, zero professional services hours? There is no setup required. You can do it with metadata extractors. I'll explain that a bit more. And there's a last component here is the Gen AI Copilot built in to the product. And I'll give you an example, hopefully it becomes clearer. Within Asia Pacific itself, we have customers already, I think you're familiar with Vodafone that's in India, some telco customers, as well as some Indonesian banks that are already using the Octopath. So before I go on, very key message from this slide is it's going to be automated, it's not going to be manual. So number one is automated, it's not manual. Number two, it is going to give you very fast time to value and really no professional services required. Let's look at the ecosystem. Look at the ecosystem that you have, and you will find that you have data landscape. Some of them you might not even know. That's the truth. We might not even know. Where is a business intelligence report that is being used by my CEO, what he sees, and where it comes throughout the entire ecosystem, I probably don't know. So what we want to be able to do is, very key point here, if you see this metadata harvesting agent, it has the ability to connect with any of this, anything that you see in this slide. We have the ability to connect to it, capture all the metadata, pushes it into a knowledge hub, which is a graphical user interface, web-based of course, which allows you to then see how the data flows from the very source till the very business intelligence or report or AI chatbot that is using it. And this will help you make sure that all your data initiatives, your data governance requirements are met. Next one. So here's another view of the same thing. Tech and business data users, we typically build applications, right? We build applications for a particular need. I'm building an application for you to know what is your sales report. I'm building an application to know whether you are meeting your compliance requirements. I'm building applications even for HR. Has everybody done their mandatory compliance to say that they have not done any site letters for us in sales? So all of this becomes intertwined. Everything is joined together. It is harder and harder for us today. I will probably say it's impossible for us today to actually do this using Excel spreadsheets. When life was easy, maybe 15 to 20 years ago, You had one CRM system, you had one streaming source, you had one team doing transformation, and you had one IT function that reports results. That is probably no longer true. Every line of business, every function will choose sometimes to have their own IT capabilities. So it is not rare for us to see customers just use on the right hand side. Some people use Power BI, as well as they use Click, as well as use Tableau. And today it's even more popular if you are one of these white coders. You can go and build your own UI based on a web-based platform that accesses a database that you have created because you have more flexibility, which is great. Data becomes democratized. Last few slides. I know I'm going quite fast, but let me give you an example. A month ago, I was with a customer, a bank customer, in one of the largest Southeast Asia banks. They were migrating from I would like to avoid the word traditional data warehouse. They were migrating from a traditional data warehouse that was built over 15 years. So the use case is really simple. I want to modernize from a traditional data warehouse that was built over 15 years to a modern system. And this is used for regulatory reporting. So what was the interesting thing was that they had this fear. And what's the fear? The fear was, I do not know what I do not know. So whatever was written, I will not touch. Meaning, I'll just use it. A programming language used for procedures, which is called BASIC. Sounds simple, right? Basic programming language. So used for stored procedures that were doing transformations within the data warehouse. As part of the modernization, they needed to understand where is the governance and compliance used for AI. They needed to understand what each of these transformations were doing. It was interesting in a way because our tool picked up that for every one of the regulatory reports, there were about 200-300 stored procedures, because what they did was, from 15 years ago, the first stored procedure, whenever a change was introduced, they would just make a copy, and then every year, whenever any change came, they just made another copy and copy and copy and copy. So for 15 years, they've been copying stored procedures. So what happened next was they say, hey, I can get a lot of financial optimizations out of this because I can now consolidate and understand what has been happening in these stored procedures into a single code base. So point number 5 there, data democratization and tribal knowledge. Something that was written 15 years ago, most likely, for whatever reasons, it might have been documented, but documentation probably is not up to date. There were programming languages that used maybe BASIC. It's quite hard. Maybe some people have no BASIC, but most people are no longer trained in BASIC. That was embedded inside there for rules that were created by a regulator. So having said that, I want to maybe show you a demonstration in a short while. But before that, let me talk about some of the basic things. If you've ever been in a situation that you have to do data management, it happens fairly often, unfortunately. So I'll talk right at the very top where there is this business intelligence. This is where your boss looks at the data, and some of the data looks funny. For example, why did sales from region become 0 last week? So he will talk to his data analyst. His data analyst now, depending on whether you have an automated system or not, you immediately backtrace the actual database itself. If it's there, you're good. If not, then you have to go downstream tracing. Basically, go back to the ETL process that generated the data, go back, maybe you have the data lake, go back there, go back there, and go back there. It could be, and it's not uncommon, your downstream system had a CRM upgrade. You introduced a new column, or the way that you calculated the column had changed, the data type had changed. So the change of the data type has a downstream impact. So the downstream impact here has to be propagated to every ETL and every extraction and every database that uses the downstream system. So that's problem number 1. If you have no real-time visibility into this, fairly hard to solve. Here's another thing. Maybe I want to use a new ETL tool. I'm very keen to use DBT. Okay, let's go use DBT. So what happens if I change the process? Can I ensure that all the data types, all the data transformations are going to be exactly the same, right? And obviously the last one is if you are regulatory reporting, you're going to tell the auditor comes in and tells me, can you tell me how this was calculated, show me the entire data stream and lineage. Happening more and more popular for AI as well, right? So tell me you're using AI for screening of people who join your company. How is your AI doing that, and what are the streams that you're using to do that? Okay, enough talk, let's see it in action. Trust me, it's quite fun, I hope. Alright, so this is the UI interface. It actually shows you, let me see that, shows you everything about your data ecosystem. So here's the boss, he comes and tells you, tell me about top product sales. I think I have a problem because the data is not showing exactly what I want. So this diagram shows you that it actually came from an SSIS, which is a Microsoft SQL Server ETL engine. It's a stock procedure. It connects to 8 downstream systems. So it can actually show you up to the column level lineage. For example, here, how is a customer identified? Sounds simple enough. I think some of you will know there are some countries that do not have first name, last name. They only have one name. So in any case, I've now found out, hey, there's a problem with the inner system lineage, which is really the transformations that are happening. So this is a data warehouse product. I can actually tell you that there's a lineage error. So it comes up, hey, there's something wrong here. That is the orphan column detection linkage guide. Using LLMs, we are able to tell you, maybe you should do this. Okay, so this is the part that you need to take note. This is not a live system. No changes are actually made. These are recommendations to your metadata so that you can take this if you choose to and then implement it into a non-production system first. So you can do AI optimizations. We can, hey, these are the fixes that you should make to your metadata to give you better performance. And what are the important things? I remember I said, old system, customer, written in BASIC. Not many people know BASIC anymore. Some do. Not everyone does. But it gives you the ability to interpret what's actually going on. So you know the flow of the data. And then from that, we actually do something more than this. We actually allow you to migrate from one existing system to another existing system. For example, we could have migrated you from SQL Server to Spark, if you're using Spark, SQL Server to Hive, if you were using Hive. So hopefully it gives you a idea about how powerful Octopi really is. Because Octopi goes into your existing systems, zero code, whatever is there is extracted. It gives you the ability to see all the lineage. It gives you the ability to optimize as well as to create migration scripts. Having said that, it goes even above more. Now, if you were in a migration project, you will know that migration projects are typically painful. One of the things that you do when you do a cut over from a migration project is, why is my report missing? Why is my data missing? Because you're going to be saying, it is a different system, the way it stores data, the data types, the naming conventions. With Octopi, you are able to see parallel runs of your old system and your new system, and then be ensured that your data lineage does not have any problems and issues. Alright, benefits. I just spoke about them very quickly. Legacy modernization. If you are moving from one system to another system, simple thing, you do not know what you do not know, you do not see what you do not see. Octopi automatically detects every part of your system so that you can make optimizations to the system before a migration. Reduce key person dependency. I like this one because if you have used an older programming language to do transformations, I typically try to avoid the mainframe, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you're using something like COBOL to a new system, it's actually fairly hard to find COBOL developers nowadays. So you're actually reducing your key person dependency, And most importantly, maybe the last one, the last two, when your boss asks you, hey, why did this project break? Why this data seems to be wrong? You actually have the full lineage that you can go back to and get things fixed very quickly. Last but not least, compliance and audit readiness. This is just a non-negotiable nowadays, right? You're using AI, fine. You need to prove to the regulator auditors why and how and where did this data come from. So Cloudera Octopi gives you the ability to get all of this without the reason, without actually having a heavy cost, without an investment in professional services, and it gives you time to value very, very quickly. So last slide, before I go, two last slides actually, is why now? I will maybe ask it another way, why not now? Because your alternatives are fairly painful. Every organization typically has metadata governance in place already. If it's not done automatically or it's done semi-automatically, it can be very painful. There is more and more demand, and throughout the rest of the day, in the afternoon, you see some very cool, very great, personally I feel very great conversational chatbots as the ability to access your data. But if you're going to use that for AI, without the ability to actually tell your regulator how you derive that data, that's going to be causing you some other challenges as well. One last thing I probably didn't mention is, during that demonstration earlier, we could have tagged PII data. You can say these columns are PII, so that you can see who is actually accessing PII data, whether from any ETL, whether it's from any business intelligence report. You can actually, it helps you a lot, because as one of the things that we have found is when you are building applications, developers, we build applications to meet one specific need. And when that specific need is met, somebody else has access to the data, they may do other things with it that was not intended. With a system like Octopi in place, you will have all of these capabilities built in. Last 2 minutes, let me just see whether the clicker works. There it is. For the sake of completeness, please, if you want to take a picture, please give us some feedback about the Evolve and give us feedback about the survey. I'm ahead of time, 2 minutes ahead of time. Thank you very much, great audience. If you have any questions, I'll be here. Thanks.